Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. I have with me Mr. Kanwal SIbal, one of the most renowned voices in India as far as foreign policy is concerned. There are loads of renowned voices, but this is a voice of reason, and that's why I like interacting with him. Sir, Namaskar, thank you so much.
My
Welcome to the
pleasure.
show. Sir, I want to ask you about diplomacy. How do you think India is playing this whole Pahalgam attack going across to the world? Because there's been a lot of diplomacy happening since yesterday, a lot of phone calls, a lot of meetings. What's the baseline for this, sir? What are we trying to do?
First of all, I would say that government has proceeded very well, very thoughtfully, maturely, and have, in the first instance, chosen diplomatic options. And these are not empty diplomatic options. Uh, the most important being the suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty. Now, of course, people will say that this doesn't impose immediate costs on Pakistan, and we are looking at some immediate costs. But that may be a valid viewpoint in view of the enormity of what these fellows did in Pahalgam. But nevertheless, there is a tactical approach and there is a strategic approach. And the Indus water suspension is a strategic approach, where you will now go forward and build your power plants and the future ones as you wish, taking into account the latest technology, uh, and not be bound by 60s and 70s technology. Because Pakistan has succeeded because of treaty obligations we have in delaying our projects, which means therefore enhanced costs. In some cases, in Bagliar and others, we've had to redesign the project. Uh, in fact, one of the neutral experts was one of the persons that said that there's now new technology with regard to ponding and sluice gates, and therefore India is right in adopting this new technology, but the Pakistanis insisted that this would not be permitted, and then we had to go back to old technologies. Now, these are the things we can do, and build and announce additional uh, power plants on these rivers, the three rivers, and of course send a message that we are not going to consult the Pakistani, we're not going to consult you anymore. And then there is this pending thing about our right to withdraw 1 million acre feet of water from these rivers for irrigation. Uh, uh, so not for consumption purposes, for irrigation. We've not done that. We can do that too. As it is, if you recall, I forget the exact dates in 2010 and 2018, 19, when there was in the first case it was Hafiz Saeed who said that we're going to launch a water jihad against India, and when in 2018-19 there was a diminution of flows in the Indus because of climate change issues and everything else, they started blaming India for stopping water. Uh, and then, of course, next year or whenever Pakistan was flooded, three-fourths, two-thirds of Pakistan was flooded with water, and that sort of took that sort of exposed the, the stupidity of their claims that we had been deliberately blocking the flow of water. What I mean is, this is a very sensitive political issue, and if Pakistan loses control over Indian actions, that has long-term, medium, long-term implications. With regard to other things, closing the border, no trade, this and that. In any case, the trade was very little. Importantly, we have annulled the posts, annulled, not simply asked these defense attaches of Pakistan to go back, but we have annulled these posts. Uh, and we are withdrawing our own people. That's a very good step, and it'll take a long time for this decision to be reversed. Reducing, and I was involved in this business when I was foreign secretary, about how much you can reduce the number of people in our respective missions without making the working of the mission impossible. And hence, this 50 was considered a number which would allow the two missions to work at minimum levels. Now we've reduced it to 30, which effectively means that the missions won't be able to function, because this includes your local staff and including what you call class 4, you know, drivers and gardeners and stuff like that because we don't employ locals because of these fellows being connected to intelligence agencies and the security reasons. That's a good step. That's a good step. And then revoking visas and all that. Okay, that's important, but I don't think it is terribly material in its consequences on the ground. It's not as if there's such a large number of Pakistanis who've been coming to India. What this, of course, means is that all that stuff about people from this side going there, people from the other side coming here because they are divided families and this and that. So that sort of a thing will stop, and it will put pressure on those people who have relations on both sides. So that also is an important step to send a message to Pakistan. Now the question is this enough? Is this sufficient? Will it satisfy public opinion? Do we want to consider kinetic options? What could be those options? How realistic they could be? Can we control escalation? One view can be, personally, I would say that this is feasible, doable, and would be consistent with what we are doing, is to actually abrogate this ceasefire agreement. But why have this ceasefire agreement? I mean, when Pakistan launches these kind of horrendous terrorist attacks with a clear-cut objective of, you know, destabilizing Kashmir and seeing if they can undo the results of progressive normalization that has occurred, then what's the virtue in having a ceasefire? Simply because a ceasefire also protects nationals on our side on the border, their lives are better protected, etc., etc. But then this is a price that you have to pay. Therefore, I would say that you can get rid of this ceasefire business. Plus, you can make some military movements, substantive military movements, to force the Pakistanis to mirror those movements on their side, which means withdraw people from the western border where they are under attack by the Pakistani Taliban, and the Balochistan Liberation Front, as well as the Afghan Taliban. That could another be a point. That could be another point of pressure. There's another thing that we can do now that the Pakistan. I don't know if what the ins and outs of this are, but it looks attractive. Uh, Pakistan has closed airspace to Indian carriers. Now, what we can do in return is to say that no carrier will be allowed to land in India, any carrier, which actually enters India through Pakistani airspace, which would be a huge blow to international carriers. And will also deprive the wretched Pakistanis of whatever earnings they get from overflight and stuff like that. This is something we can do and generate, and then finally reactivate the FATF. It's very clear that terrorism being supported by these fellows, and something which we could have done, we should have done, but somehow we are unable to do this, is to declare Pakistan a terror state. After all, we've been saying that past to the Americans, why don't you declare Pakistan a terror state and this and that? And the answer has been, why don't you do it yourself in the first instance? Now, of course, declaring it a terrorist state would mean that you have then to break diplomatic relations entirely. You can't have diplomatic relations with a state you've declared as a terrorist state. But depending on how these things develop, what Pakistan's reaction is, this is an option that could also be kept on the table for implementation if and when becomes necessary. But for that, you need to have a law, legislation in your country, like the Americans have. Whether there's enough internal consensus on this, I don't know, because there are lobbies, there are voices there are NGOs. This is the great weakness of our society. We still want to talk peace and stuff like that. So there are elements in some of our states in particular. I don't want to mention those states, which which have powerful lobbies who think along these lines. So there it is.
So the interesting thing that I'm seeing is that this time, except for Antonio Gutierrez, who's I think one of the biggest lumps on the face of the planet, but except for him, nobody's told India to have any restraint. I mean, at this point in time, you tell, oh, please have restraint. What is this with these leftists? I mean, have they got no sense? Till the time it doesn't happen in Antonio Gutierrez's house, he will not understand what is
I
actually
did,
taking place here.
I didn't see Gutierrez's statement. I was waiting for it because this fellow always uh, pronounces, gives statements on when these things happen anywhere. And there were some people who were saying that he's been slow on the uptake, that he is not immediately commenting. What did he exactly say? What did he say? Would you know?
He said, I would expect India and Pakistan to exercise restraint.
It's terrible, terrible. What is remarkable this time, and this is a huge change from the past, because I was in Washington when there was ethnic cleansing in Jammu and Kashmir, and Kashmir blew up internally, was in flames, um, and there were these all these human rights organizations were targeting us terribly, Human Rights Watch and Asia Watch and what have you. But the important thing is, in our official conversations with the United States, they would not accept that Pakistan was engaged in terrorism against us. The general view was that this is not international terrorism. This is localized terrorism, a product of the unresolved issue between India and Pakistan of Jammu and Kashmir. Hmm? And in fact, we were also warned, and I was part of that conversation in the State Department at very high level, that beware that our anti-terrorism laws are directed against all countries. That, what is the situation today with President Trump himself, in a very strongly worded message, has supported India. The Secretary of State has done it. The Deputy Secretary of State has done it. The State Department spokesman has done it. The White House spokesman has done it. Individual senators and congressmen have done it. Pam Bondi has done it. The Attorney General has done it. Remarkable. Plus, of course, whether it is France or Germany or EU or Saudi Arabia or UAE or Indonesia, Russia, all these countries have made strong statements. So, at the diplomatic level, I think there is very good understanding that India has suffered an unacceptable attack on on innocent tourists in Jammu and Kashmir. Iran has issued a very interesting statement, which I have actually examined and pointed out the nuance in it. They are talking about the attack in Pahalgam, India, whereas most countries have said Pahalgam, Jammu and Kashmir, which sort of is equivocating, leaving unsaid whether they accept Jammu and Kashmir as an integral part of India. But Iran has said it, Pahalgam, India. This is a message to Pakistan because they're very upset with Pakistan also. Uh, so therefore, in terms of whatever action want to take, other action we want to take, um, I think the diplomatic uh, part of it will be relatively easier this time than in the past. Though, of course, no country is going to encourage India to take kinetic action. And if things start going out of hand, then we'll have advice, as we have been giving, that dialogue and diplomacy is the way out. So that is there. But altogether, I must say it's a great success in terms of our diplomacy, that there is now such wide acceptance in all parts of the world that India is a victim of Pakistani terror.
Pakistan has always used this tactic to kind of get us to talk to them since history, and since Modi Saab has come, he's kind of put an end to it. He's not allowed this tactic to kind of go forward, and we've seen the frustration within the Pakistanis with regards to that. When you look at something like this, uh, we don't see, except this one statement, we don't see a very funny, stupid statement even from China. they have put across a very strong statement, as a matter of fact, against terrorism. So it sure does seem like India has played its cards really, really well as far as the international diplomacy is concerned. Having said that, sir, when something like this will happen, and evidently something may just happen, what kind of a message will India be sending across to the world?
Well, the message would be that the threshold of our tolerance with regard to terrorism has been crossed in this case. Uh, and it's quite clear that the Pakistani army chief has encouraged this. I mean, he's a bloody, sorry for the language, mullah, who's the army chief. He talks like one. And this and the speech he gave the other day about Hindus and Muslims being totally different people with in every way, including the ambitions of both Hindus and Muslims and stuff like that. Uh, and then lauding the heroic struggle of the people of Jammu and Kashmir and emphasizing the two bloody nation theory. How many years after, 78 years after the country has been divided, and the two nation theory has actually been proven to be absurd with the separation of Bangladesh. Huh? So clearly, two, three things have happened. This Tababur Rana's extradition, and the concern that more will be revealed about the implications of the Pakistan military and others in the Mumbai attack. Uh, and the fact that Kashmir was getting more and more stable, though there were issues there and there. But generally speaking, in terms of the influx of tourism, prior to that, the elections, and evidently free and fair because the Abdullahs have come back to power, uh, and the participation in the elections, which was very substantial. Uh, Generally speaking, the Kashmiris getting more and more, uh, having more and more vested interest in peace and stability, and have more prosperity for themselves. And you and I were in Kashmir in January, and I visited Srinagar after many years, and I was surprised to see restaurants and beauty parlors also, uh, and generally the quality of life altogether changed. So this is what has impelled the mullah army chief to do something or encourage something on the ground, which would set back the situation from their point of view, which will uh, push India to take stronger steps in rooting out terrorists, with all the consequent fallout in terms of how the public in Jammu and Kashmir view this. It's also very encouraging that a lot of people have come out in the streets, in candlelight marches, protesting against what has happened, because they're fearing that this will cost them economically and this and that. So all this is anathema to Pakistan, the progress towards stabilization in Jammu and Kashmir. And these wretched fellows come and have staged this overtly and in the most perverse manner, a jihadi strike against innocent Hindus, just killing them for no reason.
That's the whole thing, sir. I mean, uh, uh, it's so funny that there is still that thing within India, and you kind of hinted towards it, but I'll kind of say it. There is still that section within India. Oh, gee, we must talk to Pakistan. This Indus Valley thing we can't be doing. It is inhuman. Um, and you were on a panel some time ago, I think, and you advocated for this very very strongly. And I support that, sir. So, but when we look at America and the change reaction from Trump today, his reaction or the American reaction wasn't so even during Pulwama, right? It was still, oh, be careful, this, that, you, and all that. This time, it's not that. This time, Trump is saying, do what you need to. So, what's
Hmm.
changed in the American mindset? That the official narrative is this. Of course, unofficially, we can see what the media is doing and how Trump, of course, corrected it. But what's changed in the American thinking, especially with regards to India and Pakistan?
It is because of the change of power in United States with Trump and the Republicans coming to power. Unlike the Democrats, which were participants in this entire campaign against India on democracy and persecution of human rights and Hindutva and the Hindu majoritarianism and stuff like that. I mean, there was this progressive wing of the Democratic Party, Ilhan Omar, and lots of people like that who were pushing this line. And it was, although mind you, at one level there was very good progress with the Biden administration, but they kept this weapon in their hand to continue to put pressure on India and pander to these lobbies within their own party as well as the US press and NGOs and others and the academia, which has continued to have a very biased, more than biased view of developments in India. The New York Times will never see anything good in India. It's a long story. And you had this situation where Blinken himself, on two occasions, the launch of the Human Rights Report, Annual Human Rights Report, and the Religious Freedom Report, actually named India, which no Secretary of State had done earlier. Clearly, this was a very conscious decision motivated by whatever forces were behind this. Now, Trump is very strong on Islamic terrorism, and he's been making a lot of statements on this. And you have Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence. We know what her views are. So it's a what you are seeing and what you mentioned is the Republican mindset with regard to Islamic terrorism. Now you look at what J.D. Vance said in his speech at the Munich Security Conference, and his other statement that the first Islamic country to have a nuclear bomb will be Britain. He's terribly worried about the influence of the Muslim lobbies, Islamic lobbies, in a country like Britain. So what you just referred to, what you mentioned as the kind of understanding and support that we're getting from the United States is a reflection of what I have just mentioned, the thinking at the highest quarters of the Republican Party on the entire issue of the threat of Islamic fundamentalism and terrorism to the United States, of course, but on a larger canvas to Western civilization.
So we've also seen a very interesting kind of I don't know if it's going to be called a game or whatever it is. The sheer factor that India reacted in the way that they did, and we've been talking about this Indus water thing for a decade now. But for the past year, I've been seeing movements on this. We went to the World Bank, we put our thing up. We've been going at it for a long time. So this has been building. India was looking for an opportunity to kind of just say, okay, get lost. And I think this thing came across. Uh, Having said that, sir, diplomatic uh, isolation is something that we've done pretty well for Pakistan. And that's been a very, very good policy. How do you think that is going to be taken forward as far as squeezing them is concerned? Because it's going to be also a set of messaging that India will need to do going forward. Mr. Jaishankar would be one of the most busiest people traveling around, talking to people, probably, what should be our next step?
See, the thing is that countries are now wooing India. Our relationship with the United States has expanded in many directions enormously, though, of course, on this tariff business, we have challenge ahead of us, and we have to deal with this bugbear that Trump himself has about tariffs and stuff. But we seem to be engaging the United States on this issue reasonably well, and hopefully some kind of a win-win multi-sector trade agreement can be can be reached. The fact that and J.D. Vance confirmed that in his speech that we've already finalized the terms of reference, that itself is very important, which means that the basis on which we are going to discuss this has already been agreed upon. And this would obviously imply willingness to open on both sides. So that is one. Europe is now wanting to engage us. Because they want to have now additional options because of the problems they have with the United States. They're talking about a divorce between Europe and United States. Now, if Europe wants to develop new options for their trade and for everything else, who do they turn to? They can't turn to China. That's an option. But they also describe China as a systemic adversary of the European Union. So India therefore stands out almost as big a country, with a with a growing economy, which will catch up with China sooner rather than later, hopefully so, and huge, enormous talent pool, uh, tremendous consumption market, because unlike China, our economy is based largely on consumption. So there's a huge market. So as our economy grows, consumption levels will grow, and these people will find outlets for their goods and technology and everything else. And then we are, as you know, wooing and are being wooed by the Gulf states, UAE and Saudi Arabia, Oman and others. Uh, and the kind of linkages that we have there are very important. So important that Pakistan has got marginalized. So that is a plus for us. Now, with Indonesia, which is a very large Muslim country, we had their president come here as a chief guest at our Republic Day. So there are some openings there. Japan is obviously very friendly with Japan. China would have its own. China, of course, is a problem for us, but China is also suffering from terrorism in Pakistan. And and what you said earlier about a statement being made to them by them in supporting or supportive of India and against terrorism is also a reflection of their unhappiness with Pakistan on this account. But I won't uh, exaggerate our relationship with China so positively. Um, but uh, Latin America, we got now great friends in Latin America politically, whether it's Argentina or Peru or others.
Argentina
Very,
passed a resolution, sir, in their
yeah.
parliament.
So I think the diplomatic um, canvas is very favorable because of recognition that India has become important. It's an important player. India has they have to reach out to India, and in a situation like this, when India has suffered this brutal strike, diplomacy in their calculation demands that they give support to India and not come across as being different. This is a
Sir.
positive.
Lastly, sir, the foreign minister of foreign minister, I really don't care. One of these ministers of Pakistan got caught in a news channel, and she asked him that you know they're saying that you've done this terrorism, and he turns around and says, we've done this for 3 decades for the British and the
That's the
Americans.
yeah, that is the defense minister.
Yeah, I mean, same.
Yeah,
So these guys change their positions like clothes. So
yeah,
and
yeah.
they're one in the same.
I
So
heard that, and I have commented on that to say
what's
that
this? This is like, I mean, you're openly coming out and saying, "Oh, no, 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 it's not our fault. We are jihadis because the Americans made us jihadis."
yeah, yeah. And
So
I've commented on that to say that old habits die hard, and now this has this support for terrorism, jihad has entered into their bloodstream because
yeah.
they've been at it for so long. Yeah, he said that. I heard that. Uh, but let me conclude by saying something, which is that all said and done, whatever options we have, and we must use them, and and instill as much of fear in Pakistan about consequences of continuing to support terrorism. This war against terrorism is very difficult to win.
Yep.
United States had this war for God knows 2 3 decades, and then at the end, the Taliban have come back to power in Afghanistan. Uh, France was very active in in Sahara in the Sahel region, but they've had to withdraw. And then you see in Europe itself, uh, these chaps sit in buses and car, not buses and vehicles and this and that, and they mow down people in the streets, on bridges, pedestrian areas, killing so many people like that. The individuals get radicalized. Uh, so these acts will continue. At one level, you can pressure the state, but the state can hide behind these lone wolves and these individuals through the other mechanisms they have, the mosques and madrasas and everything else. So while they pretend that they're not involved in terrorism, but they keep the infrastructure alive and use it. And then how do you combat that? So it's a big challenge to the international community, including India. So while punitive action needs to be taken, should be taken, but we've also to keep in mind that punitive action has its limits. And finally, what about those guys in India itself, actually, who emulate these jihadi acts also? And the jihadi discourse, I can hear it myself uh, on television and elsewhere. So it's a very deep seated problem.
Yeah, I don't know. So if it's I don't know if it's a deep seated problem or it's how they are. That's, I think, a better way of putting it.
There are
Because
things that you can't. There are things you can't say, but
yeah,
there
of
are
course.
things that one understands. Okay.
Yeah, and the most surprising part of this is that
But let me say something, Adi, which is interesting. You see the sea change in thinking in Saudi Arabia and UAE.
I was about to say that. See, you've kind of picked up. Yeah,
Remarkable, remarkable that the source of fundamentalism has changed remarkably, and they're moving towards modernity and anti-terrorism and reform and everything else. But these
so,
HF fellows next door who are converts,
yeah.
huh, they are still living in a different world altogether. They're not
Like
taking advantage. They're
I
not
love
taking it.
Dubai, sir. I love Dubai. Go there. It's beautiful,
Yeah,
fantastic, free.
they're not taking advantage of the positive reformist movements in the Arab world to actually change themselves. Unfortunately, there's this wretched Turkey also, uh, which is sort of giving them support. It's unfortunate. Uh, but nevertheless, it's remarkable that Pakistan its leadership has not taken a cue from their benefactors, who've always been their benefactors, to actually emulate them and veer themselves away from this path of jihad and terrorism and stuff like that.
You've kind of hit it on the head. So one of the things, like I was mentioning to you, that the Islamic world itself, there are only two, three entities that remain the way, uh, that the so-called jihadis want to be at. Uh, some parts of the Middle East, you've got the AfPak region, and then you've got this Bangladesh Rohingya, game. Otherwise, you see the Islamic world saying, "Yeah, this thing." So I'm Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, that entire thing which is there. Otherwise, the Islamic world is kind of shunning this thing because they know they won't be able to survive. So this has to bring in a catalyst change, and I think that's what is required. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the time. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and let's see what happens. And I'm sure we'll be having a conversation very soon once again because there's going to be a lot of diplomacy
My
happening
pleasure.
around.
My pleasure. All the
Thank you,
best.
sir. Thank you so much to all the audience. Please share, like, and subscribe. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.